Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another glorious episode of Brad's Bourbon Reviews, the podcast. I am your host, Brad Hughes, and today I am joined by a great guest, man. I am so excited to have you on the show. He is the co-founder of The Prideful Goat. He is the host of Bourbon Real Talk, and he is one of my personal influences for starting the Brad's Bourbon Reviews podcast and the reviews that I do in general. Randy Sullivan. Randy, what is going on, buddy?
Oh, I am just happy to be here. I'm blown away when I hear that I inspired somebody to do something like this, and I always say the same thing: "You're welcome," and I'm sorry. So you're welcome, and I'm sorry.
No, I appreciate it.
Just happy to be here.
Well, I'm happy to have you, man. I really am. I've been a big fan for a while. I also forgot to mention the founder of the Someone Say Whiskey Facebook group, which is probably the greatest Facebook group on the planet if you're a bourbon person.
Yeah, so there's
bourbon.
The Bourbon Real Talk community, which is more of just like a discussion forum for the viewers of the podcast, and then Someone Say Whiskey is an actual whiskey club. We do 30 single barrel selections a year and work to make sure that different members get a chance to buy different barrels. And we do a lot of like industry activations where, you know, a master distiller come in town and they'll host a dinner at one of our houses, and we'll have 60 members come and eat for free and ask questions of the master distiller and try all their whiskeys. And, you know, so that's more of like events and bottles type situation, lots of fundraisers. And then Bourbon Real Talk community is more of a discussion forum. But both of them have the same ethos, which is, you know, basically don't be a dick, right? Like come in and, you know, be about the community and don't be a troll.
Yeah, so. The bourbon trolls are. So I am a lifelong Star Wars fan. And I actually do a Star Wars podcast as well with some friends of mine. And I don't know what's worse, shitty Star Wars fans or shitty bourbon people or whiskey people in general. It's a toss up.
Both groups have the same like origin story. Yeah. And I think what happens is either your mama doesn't hold you enough when you're a baby, or she might have held you too much. And now you're just an angry piece of shit, for lack of a better description, and you got to see how miserable you can make other people, or you just can't live with yourself. I don't know. I gave up reforming the trolls a while ago.
It's a losing battle. It's a losing battle. You're not going to change anyone's mind. They're going to just stay in the pocket and be a douche. So you just got to let them douche it out.
I have found a technique that works, but it's kind of hard to do. But what you have to do is, it doesn't matter what they say. You have to keep telling them that you know that they're hurting and you still love them. And I broke this kid one time. Right? He got on and he said something ugly, and I was like, you know, that's kind of not a cool thing to say, because I do a lot of suicide prevention work.
Oh, it wasn't like that, was it?
You know, no, but it's like, you know, when somebody just comes in and calls your whole being into question, like you're an evil person or you don't matter, right? Because trolls always assume negative intent. And I said, you know, kind of not cool, you know, trying to do a good thing here, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he said something else negative, and I wrote him back and I said, well, I know that people who are feeling whole don't talk to strangers like this on the internet. And so I don't know what happened to you, and I don't know if you've ever watched my podcast to the end, but I just want to let you know that I love you.
That's beautiful.
And he replied something to the effect like, I knew you were gay, you know, and so
what a douchebag. It takes a nice moment and makes you gay. Oh my God.
But you got to keep going. And so I just said, hey, man, I know that's low-hanging fruit. That's an easy joke to make. It doesn't change the fact that I know you're hurting, and I want to let you know that I care about whatever it is that you're going through, and I do really love you. And that's what my whole platform is about bringing people together in connection. And there were a couple more interchanges, and then finally, like, I broke him. You know what I mean? So you can do it. It's just it's a pride swallowing siege, because as a man, you know, if I say something nice to somebody and they're like, "Oh, you homo," yeah. I'm like, I will fight you for multiple reasons.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah. I'm used to it because of the Star Wars stuff. You know, you can't say that you like this movie better than this movie. Oh my God, especially if you like the sequel trilogy, like I happen to. You're the scum of the earth. You're not a real Star Wars fan. You're a piece of shit. I hate you. You're not a real Star Wars fan. What do you know? I mean, I grew up watching it. It's insane. But it's
I didn't watch Star Wars until like 2 summers ago.
None of them?
No, I think I saw like Return of the Jedi when I was a little kid or something.
I think Brad's about to get into troll mode here. No.
Yeah, so it'd been so long. And my kids and we would watch movies at night after my wife and I finished working. And so we decided we were going to watch all of Star Wars. So we start doing research, and it's like, how do you watch Star Wars? Do you watch it in the order that they were released, or do you watch it in chronological order? And eventually we decided to watch it in the order that they were released.
I understand that, but bad move.
We read, there were pros and cons to both. So we watched them in order that they were released. And you know what that does? It makes you not hate the new ones.
Yeah.
Because the cinematography is so much more advanced and all that stuff. So when I got done, I was like, I don't know what all of these Star Wars nerds are freaking out about. Those movies were fine.
They're great.
There was nothing wrong with those.
It's what I call the Saturday Night Live effect, where every Star Wars fan hates everything when it's coming out, and then miraculously 15 years later they look back and talk about how great it was and has always been, and you're like, sure, you hated it the whole time it was coming out. Like, one of the biggest things in this, I don't know how this turned into Star Wars talk, but what's fine. One of the biggest things in the Star Wars community is like the movie The Last Jedi. People hate that movie or they love that movie. And of course, people who love it aren't online yelling about it, right? They just like it and shut up and move on with their lives. Yeah. But the ones that hate it are so vocal and like send death threats to the actors, and like they bullied people off social media, like just insane behavior. And it's just like you can't win with people like that. You just got to give in and be like, all right, it's whatever. I don't care what you think. Here's what I think, and who cares? Like, no one should care what I think. And I say that have been doing a Star Wars podcast for like 8 years. No one cares.
Whiskey is the exact same way, bro. When it seems impossible now, okay? But when Stag Jr. first came out, everyone was talking bad about it. Everyone.
That's wild.
And I drank it, and I was like, you like stuck up whiskey snot. There's nothing wrong with this whiskey. It's not great. It's not George T. Stagg. I get it. But they put Junior on there, right? Yeah. They were trying to tell you it was less than, you know? And so for years everybody was trashing, and now go look on the black market how much batch Stag Junior is, and it's comical. But it was like that every new release, everything that gets changed, you know, when it first changes, everybody has to come out and say how much they hate it.
Well, I mean, think about what we're drinking tonight. Early Times. We're both sipping on some Early Times Bottled and Bond. And, you know, that went over from Brown Foreman to Sazerac. And then all of a sudden everyone loved it. Now everyone hates it, but everyone I talk to loves it. And people who don't know the story think it's fine. Now, I never tried the Brown Foreman version. Was it genuinely better?
You are still drinking the Brown Foreman version.
Is it the same recipe and everything?
It's not that it's the same recipe. It's that they bought the company less than 4 years ago, and Bottle and Bond has to be made at the same distillery in the same distilling season. Oh. And they bought the inventory of from Brown Foreman to keep the brand line alive while they were aging new distillate. So
it's still the same thing.
This isn't going to switch to Sazerac distillate for another. You know, you could do the math of when the acquisition took place.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I've always heard people go like the plastic caps or the black plastic caps are the ones you want, and I've always thought this was fine. It's good. It's fine.
You know, honestly, it's funny because I did a podcast piece on this, and I had overlooked that the distillate had to all come from the same distiller. And people were just like blowing me up in the comments. They're like, it has to be Brown-Forman. It has to be. And I was like, you know what? You're right. It's all has to be Brown-Forman. But there were so many other people who were like, we did a blind taste and I could tell the difference. And I'm like, there's still batch variants.
Yeah, for sure.
You do have different people doing the blends, so maybe they're not as adept at matching the old profile, but it's still the same whiskey from the same producer, aged in the same place.
Yeah. Well, you did a video of not so long ago, actually, of people trying the same whiskey, thinking it was different stuff, and they were comparing the same whiskey out of the same bottle, presumably.
Yeah. I'm a dick for that one.
I love that video.
Yeah, not a lot of people watched it, but I did a video a while back ago where I tricked people into agreeing to tasting notes that are absolutely not in the whiskey. Okay. And 75% of the time, if I gave a tasting note, I could get the taster to agree to it when it wasn't real.
Interesting. Like and genuinely agree? Like, oh yeah, I get it. Or just being like, okay, whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That's
the
wild.
Power suggestion in whiskey is nuts, right?
That's nuts.
And so then Wes, my producer, one day was like, what if you gave everybody the same whiskey, but you told them that it was different? And I was like, Jesus, Satan, calm down. Like, then one day we had a studio audience that was coming to do something else. And I thought, well, while I have people here, I'm going to see if I can make it happen. And we were just rolling. I didn't know if we'd be able to use it because I was just too afraid that somebody would be like, you know what, these all taste the same. No, that did not happen.
That is so nuts. I like to think that I mean, this is the problem with everybody, right? Like, I like to think that I could pick that out, but who knows?
Had sommelier training for wine. Like, two of the guys have actual professional palate training.
Oh my God.
The other guy runs a whiskey tasting business. Like, he teaches people how to taste whiskey. Dude,
if that had been me, I'd have been like, please don't release that video.
Yeah, he rated because I had two bottles of Wild Turkey 101, one that was age stated and one that was non-age stated. And I alternated them so that the glasses weren't next to each other. So there were 3 that had non-age stated and 2 that had age stated, and the 2 that had age stated separated the other 3. And so what was really significant is one guy rated the non-age stated that was the exact same whiskey in 3 different glasses, like 76, 78, and 91 out of 100. Same whiskey. And, you know, that shows you a couple things. One is that when you're drinking whiskey, what you have in your mouth before you take the next sip does impact the flavor significantly.
For sure.
And as a result of that, when we are trying to pick barrels, I tell people don't taste the glasses in the same order each time you go through.
Smart.
People have a tendency to go from left to right, like they read. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, no, you've got to skip around because that glass is influencing what you're tasting in this one. And so I think that there was a little bit of that was happening to him. But there's also the power suggestion. And somebody said, number 3 is really creamy. And I was tasting with them, and I was going to try and throw out some tasting notes to throw them off if I needed to, but they started manipulating each other before I could ever get to it. So I'm totally silent during the entire tasting and just let them manipulate each other. And somebody said something positive about glass 3, and my boy's like, yeah, that's my favorite one, 91 out of 100. Yeah.
The power of suggestion is real, dude.
Yeah, and then in the comments, people are like, dude, you are terrible for doing this to these people.
I thought it was great. I was watching it laughing my ass off.
Yeah.
But I also know that, like, I'm not special. I'm an idiot, you know? Like when I started doing the all my reviews and stuff over on TikTok and on YouTube, I was always like, hey, I'm a moron. I'm an idiot who drinks bourbon in his garage. Don't listen to me.
Right.
I had an article written about me that called me a bourbon expert. And I was like, I made a video. I was like, I don't consider myself that. They didn't contact me to say that. Like, it was some video that I did. it kind of went. I use viral in quotes. Hit like 1 million views on TikTok, which essentially is nothing. But it was a video kind of like making fun of Tim Smith's whiskey, where he ages it for 24 hours, and like you know. And I was kind of shitting on it. I was just more making fun of the label than anything. And they ended up sending me a bottle and being cool about it. But they like someone wrote a full on article on some website like bourbon expert shits on this thing, and I'm like, I've never called myself that. Why are you saying that? I'm an idiot. Don't listen to me.
You know, I'm writing a book, and I won't say the full title on air, but it does have the word expert in it. And the first thing of like chapter 1 is explaining how, like, if you know anything about bourbon, you're kind of the expert of your circle of friends.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like
none of my friends drink. I am the bourbon guy in our group.
You don't need to be, like Jimmy, Russell or whatever to be a bourbon expert to your friends.
Right.
And so it's fine. I personally would not ever refer to myself as an expert.
It just sounds like a douche. Like I'm an expert on it. Like, shut up.
Or even like you watch the show, like I won't call them fans. I call them viewers.
Yeah. Listeners, viewers. Yeah. Fans is crazy.
I don't have fans.
Fans is short for fanatic. Like that's kind of weird. Like these people who are obsessed with me said this. Right.
Yeah. No, that just doesn't.
It sounds gross. And when people say that, you know what's worse than saying it? People who have like 500 followers and say that, like me and my fans, like, dude, you have an Instagram account that has 36 people that follow you. Relax.
Calm down.
Relax, dude. There's comedians like that. We were talking a little bit about comedy before. There's like delusional comedians. They're like, me and my fans. I'm like, you're an open mic comic. Stop it. You don't have fans.
Yeah.
You might one day, but right now you don't. Relax.
Right now, it's just your mom's your only repeat viewer.
Yeah.
So you can call your mom a fan if you want, but that's weird.
That's sad, is what that is.
Yeah. Until my wife watches my podcast, I'm nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I can't even get the members of my own family interested. So I'm just a guy that no one can stop, I guess.
Well, how did the whole Bourbon Real Talk thing start?
So
because by the way, I am going to say this before I'm going to interrupt you real quick. I am a huge fan. I don't think we said this on air yet. I was kind of glizzing you off camera a little bit for a minute ago. But I'm a huge fan of Bourbon Real Talk. I found you when I was doing research for a Kentucky Bourbon Trail trip, my first one. And I just went down like the YouTube autoplay rabbit hole, dude. I watched like all your videos up to that point. And this was, I want to say like June of 2022. Because we're in 2022. So like I have watched every single one of your videos, period. I've seen them all.
I am sorry. The production quality was hot garbage for a good minute. So
dude, it happens, it's fine. I didn't notice it, but you can tell that the one thing that's amazing is to go watch your most recent video and then go watch your first one. I do that sometimes. And, I've not been in this game nearly as long as you have. I'm not as prolific as you are, but it is cool to go back and watch the beginning and see where you come from, because you can kind of improve on it even at that point. But what I was getting to is like, I just love your content, and my favorite video that you've ever done was the video where you were breaking down when Buffalo Trace switched distributors. That was my all-time favorite video from you, because I was so like confused by what was going on, because I didn't know what that meant. And the way you broke it down and made somebody who's dumb as me figure it out, I can't thank you enough.
Well, that is the video that, like, I did a market visit for the Prideful Goat, and I was in Sacramento, and I walk into this liquor store, and the owner's kind of looking at me, and he's like, do I know you? And I was like, if you like whiskey, you might have seen one of my videos. I have a podcast. And he's like, RNDC. And I was like, yep, that's the one.
Oh, no way. He recognized you from that video?
Yeah. So when, a lot of industry people watched that video, a lot. And so I actually ended up getting hooked up with a distributor in Alaska for the Prideful Goat, because one of their executives was from a competing firm and called me to like talk with me. It was interesting. A lot of people from the industry saw it and said, like, let me give you some more perspective or some behind the scenes information. Right. And I ended up having to do a follow-up to it.
I remember the part too. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I had received enough updated information. It was like, some of the stuff I said could be misleading. So let me try to fix it. But, you know, if I release a video and it gets 10,000 views in the first week, like, I'm usually pretty happy. I released that video and it got 250,000 views in the first week.
Wow, that's
right.
Nuts, dude.
And it was just one of those things. And it was funny because the producer, Wes, was like, we filmed it because I had gotten the newsletter that it was happening. And I read an industry trade newsletter every morning, Monday through Friday. And I thought, oh, I'll do a piece on this. And so I wrote this really nerdy, detailed script. And Wes comes over and he's like, dude, I can't be in this video. I'd just be standing there watching you talk. He's like, just do it. And we get done. And Wes is like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do with that. Like, it's like, there's no breaks. You're just like plowing through all of this, like, detailed, nerdy information. And then it was like the most popular video he'd ever recorded of me.
That's
right?
awesome.
So you never really know.
No, you definitely don't. You definitely don't.
If I still get surprised. So, but yeah, so the origin story of the podcast was, we're going to go in the Wayback Machine. So, I became a junior high youth pastor, right after I got married. I've been married for 25 years.
Bro, I went to school to be a youth pastor.
Did you?
Yeah. And I quickly gave up on that.
I didn't. I was in the game for about 10 years. And I was never on staff, but I had the title junior high youth pastor for a while. And I just loved teaching. It was just, you know, if for those Christians out there, Christians believe that when you get saved, God gives you a gift that's meant to edify the other believers. And my gift was teaching. I loved to research and repackage and educate. And, but after I had kids, I no longer had the patience to work with youth, because especially, middle school, they are crafty.
Dog, I've got an 11-year-old. He's in 6th grade right now. And it's already starting, dude. I can't. I'm not looking forward to the next few years. It's going to suck.
Yeah. So I had to step back from that, but I still had a passion to learn and to teach. And I got into wine. I didn't really drink till I was about 28. I got into wine. I read the wine Bible cover to cover, and started collecting Bordeaux's and, you know, all that stuff, real nerd stuff. And then in 2014, I had discovered I liked whiskey. I had been at a buddy's house, and I normally just drank Jack Daniels or Jameson. Like, I wasn't like a connoisseur. And I was at a buddy's house, and I think he had 6 different bottles of whiskey, and some of them were limited editions. And I tried them all, and I went, wait a minute, this is kind of like wine tasting, because side by side, I can tell a marked difference between these different bottles. Mm-hmm. And I always thought like bourbon tasted like bourbon, you know what I mean? Like, and so that was an eye-opening thing. And then when I found out that whiskey can be open for years without it having a significant change in flavor, but wine is not super shareable, and I'm a social creature and I love to share, it's like my passion completely switched over to whiskey. But then later in 2014, my younger brother, Sean, committed suicide. And whiskey was one of the things that we had connected over. And, you know, some of my best memories with him were a couple times where we went out and had drinks, because that was something I didn't really do. But I have a couple of good memories with him. And after that, you know, we started trying to figure out, like, what do we do? Like, how do we help other people, you know, that might be struggling the way that my brother was? And my wife started doing some stuff. She started a little Facebook page called Live Stay Project. And, but we didn't really know what to do with it. It was like just disjointed, and
like an idea versus like,
yeah. We knew we wanted
a concept, not really an idea.
But at the time, she was putting together like these little jewelry pieces that were either necklaces or bracelets. And she was making like memorial lockets for people who had lost a loved one. But I was like, I want to keep people from killing themselves. Like I do want to comfort people that are, a survivor, but I would rather help people not do that. Right. And so we started doing Out of the Darkness walks, and that wasn't really for me. The vibe at those places is not really, didn't line up with my personality very well. And so eventually I was at a bottle share because I'd gotten really super involved in the whiskey community. And I was at a bottle share, and I went with my buddy Rodney, who's a black guy. And there's a Mexican dude sitting to the right of me, and there's an Indian guy sitting across from me at a 4-top table. And I was like, oh man, this is really good. And then the Mexican guy said, let me try it. And I passed it to him, and he tried it. And he passed it to the Indian guy, and he tried it. And the Indian guy passed it to the black guy, and he tried it. And the black guy passed it back to me, and I finished drinking the glass. And I thought, there was a time in this country where we couldn't even drink out of the same water fountain.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. And 2 of these people I had met that day, and we just shared a glass of whiskey out of the same glass. Like, whiskey is powerful. It brings people together. And so that experience, coupled with, me looking for a way to help people make connections, and my deep passion for bourbon and my desire to teach, all those things came together and resulted in me starting the podcast.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. I love to hear that kind of stuff. And it does bring people together, man. Like, I have met so many, I've met true friends just from doing like the reviews over on my bourbon reviews on TikTok. Like, I have genuine friends that, like, one of the friends I do the podcast with, Timmy, met him just because he started watching the videos. Like, that is one thing I do like about the bourbon community that is so much better than like the Star Wars fan community, is that most people are good people in this community. And I don't know what it is. Like, another example is we were at the Bourbon Drop in North Carolina this past weekend, and people's, like, I had tickets, and I only needed to go through once. I don't hoard whiskey. Like, that's not my jam. I get what I want and I leave. The amount of people who were just like, had tickets that either like, wives got a ticket, so you have 2 chances to get through the lottery line, who were getting called and then being like, here, before I go up here, you have another chance now to get called. It's just such a cool thing. And I don't feel like there is any other community that is quite like it. And I don't know what it is.
I do know what it is.
Please tell me. This has been bothering me for years.
Okay. So there's a book called Drunk. And let me see if I can.
Sounds like a Chuck Palahniuk book.
It's called Drunk: How We Sipped, Danced, and Stumbled Our Way to Civilization. Super interesting book. Everybody should read or listen to the audiobook. But especially if you're particularly interested in the beverage alcohol industry. And it basically explains how alcohol has become a part of every civilization. If not alcohol, some sort of intoxicant, right? So basically this book, it teaches how alcohol and other primitive intoxicants are a part of every culture all around the world, right? And what you very quickly learn is that all of the early motivation and impetus for going through the effort of fermenting anything and creating alcohol was for social interaction. It was for festivals. It was for religious ceremonies, right? In some instances, a lot of people believe that that beer became a popular product to make for the preservation of grain. So the early beer that, for instance, the Egyptians were giving to their slaves for when they were building the pyramids, it was not like modern beer. It was like drinking bread, right? So it had all of the nutrients and everything in it that they needed. Plus, it was safer to drink than water because
water was contaminated at that point. Yeah.
And a lot of people believe that the distillation of beers and various wines became necessary to preserve the calories of beers and wines that had gone bad. And so the whole concept of making alcohol is about like social organization and preservation of calories for mankind as a whole. And so as a result, all humans, even kind of shitty humans that in other areas of life you may not want to interact with, have it somewhere deep inside their lizard brain that this is not just for me. This is a communal resource that's meant to be shared. And that's why you can get involved in any whiskey environment. And this dude might be like the worst troll in the world online, and he's like a keyboard warrior and tries to get everybody riled up. But I bet money if you went over to his house and shared a pour with him, he'd probably be a pretty generous dude, and like y'all would have a good time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And it's because alcohol, we all know subconsciously that it's not just for us. It's about preservation of calories for the preservation of mankind, and it is about social rights, right? And bringing people together. It's
genetic, dude. It's baked into our DNA.
It's baked into our DNA. We can't help it.
I never thought about that because, like, I knew the history of, like, wine at some points in history. Was it safer to drink wine than water and all that kind of stuff?
Sure.
I never really connected it to, like, it's baked in our DNA. That's so cool.
It absolutely is. Yeah. And every society at some point had, and the book really delves into, you know, I learned a lot about human physiology and how the human brain works just listening to this audiobook. But alcohol affects the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain that processes risk. It causes you to feel suspicion in social environments and all that stuff. And so he basically has a theory that even though alcohol is poison, right? Because let's be clear, alcohol is poison for humans.
Yes.
The social benefits of alcohol have been so beneficial in helping humans to create society and work together and form a grand societies where we share resources together and all that stuff, that all of the physiological responses that would have caused alcohol to be more harmful to humans have not been passed on in our genetics because we were getting so much benefit out of the social nature of alcohol, if that makes sense.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so
it's booze is literally in our DNA.
Yeah, for sure.
That's so cool, man. That's so dope. So in a weird way, we should be thanking resellers.
No.
So in a weird way, it justifies Stag Junior costing $800 on the secondary. That's what you said. That's what I gathered from that. You know, that's what I gathered.
No, that is not what I'm saying.
Man.
Let me be clear. You don't have to spend a lot of money to drink good whiskey.
No, definitely don't. I do have what's the worst whiskey you've ever had?
The worst whiskey I've ever had is probably, I think I still have it down here. My wife's going to get so mad at me.
Is it the Brothers Bond?
No, I love Brothers Bond.
Okay, I was about to say.
Whiskey is like surprisingly legit.
Is it really? Okay, so I had a coworker who knows that I'm into bourbon, and she's into Vampire Diaries or whatever. Is it a show or a band? It's something like that, right?
It was a show. A TV show. I think they had 11 seasons or something.
It is a show. My friend Micah Parker was on it.
Yeah.
My friend was on the show. Yeah, it is a show. Vampire Weekend is the band. Too many vampire things going on in like the mid 2000s. But yeah, I had a friend of mine who knows that I'm into like bourbon and whiskey and stuff. And she was like, "Can you please do a review of this?" And I was like, "No." But it's good. I need to give it a shot then. Okay.
I've had them on the podcast. Like I
remember.
They're legit. I mean, they did it right. They nearly bankrupted themselves trying to start that brand.
No way.
so yeah, Brothers Bond is totally legit. They nearly bankrupted themselves trying to start that brand, because if you do it the way that they did it, right? Like, they didn't go buy finished distillate from somebody else. Okay, they went to MGP. They designed their own mash bill. They sourced their own grain. They picked their own yeast strain, and they made whiskey that MGP didn't want. It's just for them. And they had to contract distill and make enough and predict what their sales were going to be.
Holy crap.
That was over $1 million gamble of, are we going to be able to sell this whiskey?
That is terrifying.
And to be quite honest with you, so you asked me what the worst whiskey, and I'm going to tell you, but I'll tell you this about Brothers Bond. Brothers Bond is my favorite 80 proof bourbon. Damn,
that says a lot.
Because it's still got so much flavor, even at 80 proof, and their cash strength is lights out. Like, the cash strength competes with lots of other whiskeys, in my opinion, in terms of flavor quality.
No kidding. All right, well, dude, you sold me. I'm going to go buy it. I'm going to support these guys. That's an incredible story.
In that $40 price range.
That's
right?
awesome.
So the worst whiskey I've ever had is another celebrity brand called MF Bonfire.
Oh.
And
is that a whiskey or a bourbon? What is it?
It is a rye whiskey infused with Lamsang Sochong tea, and it's called a smoked rye.
Oh God!
And I forget who the celebrity was that did this. It wasn't because he did tequila. It's the bad guy from the zombie movies, Negan.
Oh, that dude.
Yeah, so that dude released this, and my wife loves following his
Dead.
career. Yeah.
Oh.
He was Denny Duquette in another show she watched, and all this. So she buys it, and she's like, "Yay, look what I bought a thing." And I'm like, "Stop buying celebrity whiskey. It's all garbage." You know. And she opened this, and we both tasted it, and you can see the only thing missing is the original pour.
Oh.
And we've had that for 2 years. So,
good Lord.
Yeah, that's probably the worst one I've ever had.
I have two that are tied for worst for me. One of them, well, I have three, but one of them is not. It's not in the same. It's bad, but it's not quite the same level of bad as these other two.
Yeah.
First one is a bottle. I was in North Carolina a few years ago, and I found this bottle, and I was in the phase of my whiskey collection where I'm like, I want silly shit, like stuff that just like you wouldn't see anywhere else, like random bottles. I remember Googling it in the store, and I couldn't find anything on it. It was called it's not Kentucky Gentleman. It's called Country Gentleman. And the dude's got like Doug Dimmadome from the Fairly Odd Parents, like the white long hat, the Texas like style hat. He's got that like a yellow like one of those like bandolero ties. And dude, it tastes like shoe polish. And it's like 80 proof. It's one of the I might send you some to see what you think. And then I had a friend try it, and he was like, "I really like it." And I was like, "I can't be your friend anymore because this is one of the worst things on God's green earth."
God brings those people in our life so that we can offload the bottles we don't want to drink. That was your chance to be like, "It's yours, buddy."
Yeah, it was $4.99 on clearance.
Actually, I have another whiskey that might be the worst, because this one is like infused, so it's not really whiskey.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I get it, but it counts.
Yeah. So my wife and I go to the wine region in Texas, usually a couple times a year, just to get away. And we had dinner we were waiting for a table at this restaurant, and they were like, "We're short staffed tonight." And so even though you see open tables, like, we're not seating people until we have a staff person to help them. So it's going to be a little bit. And if you want, I was like, "Can we get a drink?" And they're like, "Our bar's too small, but if across the street, there's a winery, and they're also a distillery, and they have their own whiskey and all that stuff. So we'll call you when your table's ready if you want." So we go over there, and I walk in, and my wife orders wine. And of course I want to try their whiskey. And so I get a pour of their whiskey, And there is a compound that you can have in your fermentation process that makes it across the still, called butyric acid. And in its raw form, it smells a little like vomit.
Oh.
But if you age the whiskey for long enough, it will esterify into isobutyl acetate, which will add like some tropical fruit notes, some pineapple and maybe some mango, guava type stuff, right? But if you don't age it, it still tastes like vomit.
Oh.
And so I taste this whiskey and I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm like, babe, this is what I've been talking about with esterification and whiskeys. You got to let them age a certain amount of time and whatnot. And she tasted it. She's like, oh, it's so bad. And I was like, if I was going to give like a review tasting note, like, remember when you were a kid in elementary school, and the weird kid would vomit on the floor and then the janitor would come in and sprinkle
sawdust crap. Yeah.
Sawdust. That's what it would smell like.
Oh,
It was just right? And,
God.
And so I go up and I'm like, hey, I have questions, right? So I'm like, and so the girl behind the counter is like, I don't know any of that stuff, but I have good news for you because our master distiller, which I'm a little
Bring
skeptic.
Bring him out.
I'm a little skeptical of someone being called master distiller if you are making
something like that
at a winery, right? Like,
yeah. No,
I'm not sure you've earned that title yet. He's right over there. And so I go up to him, and this
he's
dude is
bussing
like,
tables.
he has no idea who I am at all. Like, he's, and I'm like, if you're in the Texas, like, I go to the I'm a member of the Texas Whiskey Association. I go to the Texas whiskey tasting every year. Like, if you're in Texas whiskey, you should probably, at least my face should be familiar. He has no idea who I am. And he's like,
good
real
sign.
Super arrogant and dismissive, right? He's like, I'm like, so what mash bill do you use? He's like, we don't, that's proprietary. We don't share our mash bill because we want to make sure that our whiskey is our whiskey. We don't want anybody else replicating it. And I'm like,
I hope not.
I've got good news for you. There's not going to be anyone that tastes this. It's like, I got to make something that
tell me how to make this, please.
Yeah. So that was probably the worst, like, just non-infused whiskey I've ever had. It was.
I haven't had anything quite that bad. And this makes my kind of like I'm being a bitchy little whiny wiener. But the Jim Beam Repeal batch, dear God in heaven. Have you had that?
Didn't like it?
No. I hated it.
Okay. I've never hated anything from a major distillery.
Have you had that? Have you had that one?
I don't know if I had it at a bottle share. I know I've not owned a bottle.
Yeah.
But I try a lot of stuff at bottle share. Like when I go to bottle shares, I'm just looking for stuff I don't have at home. Right?
Yeah.
And so I try a lot of stuff. If I did, it was unremarkable. It didn't stick out in my mind.
Well, I've never, like I said, I've never had it tasted like vomit. So that's that's a good sign.
It tastes like vomit smelled. Yeah, it was.
God.
I didn't finish the glass, and we make jokes in our house about how we don't abuse alcohol, meaning we don't waste it. Yep. I poured that glass of whiskey out.
Yeah, I've done that like 3 times in my life, and even with the Jim Beam Repeal, I didn't pour it out. It's still sitting on my shelf. So
yeah, there you go.
But it ruined Coke. I'll tell you that much. It made the Coke taste bitter.
Yeah, I've had a few pot still bourbons that run Coke, and then we did a finishing project with the Prideful Goat, and it's about to come out. It releases on January the 20th at the distillery. We're doing a big release. We've got 8-year rye coming out, and we've got a rum finish.
When is this? You said January?
Yeah, January 20th in Houston, Texas. We're releasing to the public for the first time. Extremely limited edition because
guess who's going to be there? I'll be there. I'm going to come grab it. I want to come get some of this.
You should.
I will. I'll be there.
We're going to do a bottle share that night. You'll PM me. We'll figure it out.
Perfect. Yeah. Done.
So anyway, they let me buy barrels from several different sources because you don't want to get barrels from all one source, and then it's not a great source, and now
You
you've got all
can't blend
that
it.
whiskey,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So you got to, and so I thought like, well, if we get some different sources, some may be good, some may be not as good, but we should be able to blend them all together. There was one source that all of the barrels tasted like dirt, like actual dirt.
No
like
way.
Yes. And so the first time I asked for barrel samples from the distillery to test how the barrels were progressing, they sent me 4 samples, but they didn't tell me. I thought they sent me from 4 of the different sources of barrels. And so I taste them and they all taste like potting soil. So I think that something happened to all of the barrels and that we had just wasted $60,000 worth of whiskey. Right?
Oh no.
And it turned out that it was only one of the barrel sources, but this taste, this profile, this note, whatever this dirt note was so powerful that I made a cocktail with it. I made like a whiskey smash with it, which is one of my favorite cocktails. And all I could taste was dirt. And so I was like, screw this. So
Over the lemon and everything in that? That's wild.
It looked at the lemon and was like, get the fuck out of here. This is my house.
I want to try the pot soil whiskey.
I still have it. I still have it down here. And so then I came upstairs and I was like, I just need to drink something familiar to reset my palate. So I poured the Benchmark Foolproof, which is one of my favorite, like easy to find, high quality daily drinkers. And I tasted it and I'm like, God damn it, even this tastes like dirt now. Like I can't. I guess I can't drink the rest of the day. Maybe tomorrow it'll be better. So
pot soil things. Prideful Goat. I wonder if there's like a market for whiskey like Jones Soda, where it's like this whiskey tastes like pot soil.
I tried to talk the distillery into splitting it and redistilling half of it, and then bottling it in 375s and selling them as a pair. But they wouldn't do it.
Why? Just too much production cost to do it. Wouldn't be worth it.
The distillery I'm partnered with is almost the size of MGP, but no one knows it. No one knows. It's the biggest distillery west of the Mississippi.
Huh. Okay.
And they're the largest independent bottler, and they're the largest, like, I think they call it co-packing or something. Anyway, they do tons of business for other brands, and their distillery staff is like pulling their hair out. They're like busy as all get out. And the Prideful Goat, although it's a profitable and useful brand, it doesn't represent a large enough percentage of the distillery's business that I'm like, hey, I got an idea for a crazy special project that is going to take a bunch of time, energy, effort, and labor. And they're like, no, we don't have time for that. So I thought it would be cool to redistill it but then the new whiskey would be clear, right? But the Whiskey Tribe did that with one of their barrels.
Yeah, I big fan of Whiskey Tribe too.
And so I was like, what if we did something like that where maybe we redistill it, maybe we redistill like 2/3 of it, and then we bottle in like 750s of the clear new make whiskey and maybe a 750 of the dirt whiskey or something, because you don't need much of it. It tastes terrible. But yeah, we kicked that idea around a little bit, but
that would be cool. I'm serious, just because I like you so much and I like the Prideful Goat. If I could try topsoil whiskey, I'm in.
Yeah, I've got it right here. It's
bring that to the bottle share when I come into town. That'll be a good time.
It has to be the last thing you taste, because it will be the only thing you taste for the rest of the day.
Oh,
it is.
That's rough.
It does
man.
not mess around.
That's rough. How did
giggles,
go ahead.
I'm going to take a sip of this and see.
Oh no.
See if I still hate it as much as I did. And so Lindsay, my wife, she will come on the podcast occasionally, but she wants to use the podcast to get access to celebrities she likes. Okay.
That's fair. Why not?
And so there was a band she followed when she was a kid called The Party, and one of the guys in that, Damon Pamplona, he's a super awesome guy. He's been on the podcast. I've had Tony Luca, that's her favorite musical artist. He's been on the podcast. I had Brothers Bond. I had them on the podcast. and she wanted to get this actor, the Denny Duquette Negan guy, and I started talking shit about the whiskey, and she's like, "No, he's not going to come on the podcast." And I was like, "I have to maintain my integrity while I'm doing your."
Well, hey, your whiskey's shit, but if you want to come on the show, we can promote it.
Yeah, dude, it is so bad.
What's worse, the Topsoil whiskey or the or Negan's whiskey?
It's hard to say, man. This is bad. When I was growing up, my mom didn't have a smoker, okay? And she would cook brisket in the oven, okay? Which, for those of you out there that care about smoked meats, like, don't hate me. Like, she didn't know no better, all right? But to try and make it taste like it was a regular brisket, she would put liquid smoke in it, okay? And that is what this whiskey tastes like. It's this weird, sour, acrid, like, smoke flavor that's just overpowering. And I can't, I'm trying to imagine this dude that my wife is like literally in love with. Like, she loves this guy. And I'm trying to imagine him sitting at a table and they've got all of these samples out for him.
He's like, this is the one.
This represents my brand, son. Put this shit in a bottle and sell it. This is what people need to think of.
They think of me holding a baseball bat and with barbed wire around it. This is what that Walking Dead tastes like.
Right.
Oh God.
Oh, it's so bad.
Oh. So for people who don't know, I know a little bit. How did the Prideful Goat start?
It was an accident.
It's a pretty dope ass accident.
Yeah. So the Texas Whiskey Association, which I'm a member of, and I try to support them as much as I can, you know, because I live in Texas, for those who don't know. They were doing an event, and all of the members of the Texas Whiskey Association, or all the distillery members, were supposed to be at this event. So I scheduled to go down to Houston. It was being hosted at Giant Texas Distillers, formerly Gulf Coast Distillers. And so I go down there thinking, like, I'm going to make all of these contacts. I'm going to be able to set up all of these interviews all over Texas. And they did a live podcast from the event. The Texas Whiskey Association did, and I was one of their guests. And when I was down there, I walk in. Now, this place is it was the Uncle Ben's rice manufacturing facility that was built for the World War II effort. Okay, so they were packaging and shipping rice to the Allied troops. Okay, and the story goes that there's this guy who's now my business partner, Carlos de Aldecoa. He is a third generation international coffee baron. So his family controls the trade of coffee all around the world.
Damn.
Okay. And I don't know if I should say this. I'm going to say it anyway.
I can edit it out if you need me to, by the way. If you decide.
His cousins own a 600,000 acre game preserve in Africa for conservation. And he offered to take
acre.
Yes.
Holy shit.
He offered to take me there to hunt poachers. Okay. You think that you have met some ballin' ass. But until somebody legitimately offers to take you to hunt other humans, you've not met a real baller.
Oh, what's the name of that book? The Most Dangerous Game? Is that the name of the book? Where you go hunt? Jesus Christ.
And I was shook. I mean, we were sitting at lunch, you know, and he's like, if you ever.
What's more wild is you're like, you know what? I like this guy. Let's go into business together.
No. We were business partners already at this point. But
You were like, fuck, I'm going to get shot in the face.
no. This man's so nice. Like, he offered to let me and my family take his yacht out.
Poachers
Like,
are pieces of shit, for real.
No, he just so people don't think he's a monster. He sits on the board of the
We're being silly.
nonprofit.
We're being silly.
His daughter, he was very wealthy when he was young, and he got married later in life. He had kids later. One of his kids has Down syndrome. He started a coffee company in the name of his daughter and donates 100% of the revenue.
Oh, that's amazing. The revenue.
Wow. To Down syndrome related organizations and all that stuff. I mean, he's a really, really awesome guy.
That's beautiful.
But I just want people to understand, like, he's at a level that, like, it's hard to fathom. Like, one time he was going
some great Gatsby shit, dude.
Oh, for sure. He called me one day and he's like, hey, I need to go to International Stave. And I'm doing a private tour, but we're doing a negotiation of bulk buy for some barrels. Do you want to go? And I said, more than I want to live. Like, what are you talking about? Yes. And he said, this line, I've decided, it's done. This is the most baller sentence that anyone could ever say ever. Okay. The next line that came out of his mouth was, what's the closest airport to your house? Because he was bringing the plane to me.
You.
Right?
Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's some cool shit, dude.
I didn't get to go. Oh. I had a Prideful Goat event and I went and the wholesaler screwed it up and only 5 people showed up and I missed the whole thing. But anyways, so that's who we're dealing with. So
that's frustrating.
I walk in. So when he was in college, he got presented the opportunity to buy the defunct Uncle Ben's plant. So he strikes a deal with his dad to front the money, and he had 18 months to pay his dad back, or it became a family asset. He took the rice plant apart and sold the equipment all around the world for enough money to pay off what he owed. And he ended up in college owning this 1/4 acre long piece of real estate.
Jesus Christ.
And that's where he started all his coffee businesses. And at the end, he put his distillery.
That's a special dude, man.
Yeah. And so when I get there, and I'd heard about this guy, but I'd never seen him and I didn't know what he looked like. And so I'm standing there and I'm like, getting introduced to people, and the president of the Texas Whiskey Association is like, this is this person, this is that person. And I'm trying to keep it all straight. And I noticed there's this one dude that everyone's treating a little bit different. Right. And I go, hey, is this your place? And he was like, well, kind of, family businesses, that kind of thing. And I was like, oh yeah, I've heard about you. And he goes, what do you think? And I was like, oh man, this place is amazing. Like, when I walked in, I saw the still and all that. And he goes, wait, you've not been on a tour? And I said, no, this is my first time here. And he goes, Mike, get Randy whatever he wants to drink. I'm going to take him on a private tour. And so he pours me a 15-year Kentucky straight bourbon that he had just sourced. And I'm standing there, and this is like the second or third coolest I've ever been in my entire life. I'm standing there with the guy that owns the distillery. He's instructed his staff to give me something special, and I'm waiting for him to take me on this tour. And one of the other employees comes walking up and goes, hey, Carlos, you're taking him on a tour? And Carlos said, yeah. And he goes, do you see those 2 ladies at the bar? They're waiting to go on a tour. Can you take them with you? And he looked at him and he goes, no, that's your job. Come on, Randy. And I was like,
based.
This is the greatest day of my life. Like, so we go on a private tour. He tells me a bunch of stuff. He had gotten threatened to be sued by one of the major Kentucky distilleries. And I asked about it. I was like, I heard that they threatened to sue you for telling me for saying publicly what you just told me. And he was like, oh yeah. He said, but they're used to picking on like little guys that like don't fight back.
They didn't realize.
And he said, so I he told me like the legal maneuver that he did. And then he was like, and I told my attorneys to write them a letter back that said, fuck off.
Wow.
And I was like, this dude's the coolest guy
That
I've
is
ever
fucking
met.
awesome.
So that's my intro, and I'm drinking this 15-year Kentucky straight bourbon. And after I tasted it, I was like, hey, man, I run a whiskey club. We do a lot of single barrels. Like, can I get one? And he was like, do you have a DSP? And I was like, oh, you don't know what a single barrel is, and you own this distillery. That's awesome. And so I'm like, no. It goes into your bottle. It goes through your wholesaler. We tell which retailer we're working with, who to, submit the PO.
The whole process. Yeah.
And we do all the marketing, but we don't make any money or anything. Like, we never take possession of anything. We just bring our people to come buy it from the store. And he's like, yeah, you can do that all you want. And so I start setting up barrel picks for all these people because I knew what distillery the juice came from. I can't say on your podcast.
That's fine.
Non-disclosure. But it's a major Kentucky distillery. And at the time, they weren't offering cask strength versions of their whiskey and in their single barrel program. And I was like, dude, we're going to be the first ones to have a cask strength version of whiskey from this distillery. This is amazing. And so I was calling all my friends and I was like, let's do this. I think we had 5 barrel picks set up. And we found out that they didn't get the whiskey in barrels. The distillery didn't want their barrel heads in somebody else's warehouse. Oh. And so they dumped all the barrels into shipping containers, and you got a tote that had 330 gallons in it when you bought.
Interesting.
One.
Oh, this must be a big boy distillery then.
Yeah. And so he had bought 20 330 gallon totes. And I won't tell you how much they cost, but it was, you're talking, 7 figures, right? So the distillery is like, you can still pick a tote if you want. It's 1,300 bottles. And I was like, I couldn't sell, like, at the time, my whiskey club had 1,000 members. I'm like, I couldn't sell 1,300 bottles of Pappy. Like, what are you talking about?
Holy crap.
So I called my buddy, Christopher Hart, that he runs Houston Bourbon Society. I run Some Would Say Whiskey. We're North Texas. They're South Texas. I said, what if we did a whole statewide release? Because this is really interesting whiskey. Between you and I, we can get the word out about what it really is so people are excited. And he said, what if we started a new label? And I was like, can you even do that? And Christopher knows a lot more about the whiskey industry than I do. And he's like, yeah, as long as the distillery approves it. And so I called the billionaire, and he's like, he just wants to do fun stuff. So he's like, yeah, here's my attorney's information. When you pick a name, make sure that it's available for trademark and go have fun.
Holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it wasn't until like way later that he, tried to take me on a private jet and offered to let me use his yacht and all that stuff. He's like a super nice, like approachable guy. Even at that first meeting, like he grew up for part of his high school years in the Houston area. And he had like some of his high school friends that were there, like hanging out at the distillery. And
that's cool.
And stuff like that.
That's awesome.
He's a super approachable, cool guy.
Dude, that's a fucking awesome story.
He's also so baller that he doesn't know that when you're at lunch and you're like, hey, if you want to hunt humans, I can set it up for you. He doesn't know that's weird.
That's so nuts, man. That's such a cool story. Well, dude, Prideful Goat's awesome. And I will be there in January. You
should come. I'm working on setting up all of the stuff that's around it. But we're going to release both the 8-year rye and the rum finish. We did not use the barrels that taste like dirt, so don't worry.
I'm kind of upset now. I want to try the dirt barrels.
I think they still have them. I wonder if I could do a large enough marketing campaign to be like, you want to taste whiskey that tastes like dirt? That I could actually sell out the bad barrels. That'd be awesome.
There is a way to do this. There has to be a way. There has to be a way because then I think there's a way to do it.
Taste the worst whiskey you've ever tasted.
World's worst whiskey, 3 W's.
Mm-hmm.
The 3W whiskey, world's worst whiskey.
All right, I'm emailing Carlos. We're gonna see if we can make this
world's
happen.
Worst whiskey, WW3. Let's go. Well, it's probably not a good thing to say WW3 in this climate.
No. Although it would get picked up on the algorithm.
It might, dude. WW3 whiskey might be the way to go. World's worst whiskey.
WW3 whiskey.
WW3 whiskey. I think we're onto something, dude.
We're onto something.
I think we got it. And I just want a sample of the pot soil whiskey.
Yeah, you think you do.
I definitely, just for the reaction, that would go viral.
Like after you brush your teeth, like
it's still there.
Oh yeah, it's if you put something in your mouth that tells the toothpaste to get the fuck out because this is my mouth, something went terribly awry. You know.
Here it is. You ready? WW3 whiskey, world's worst whiskey, the Colgate Killer.
The Colgate Killer. Yeah,
that's it.
It's
now we just have to fight whoever owns Colgate.
It's just Carlos could. I bet he could.
Well,
I asked him one time. I go, why did you start a distillery? This is like the hardest way to make money. And remember, he controls like 40% of coffee in the United States passes through his hands before it makes it.
Jesus Christ.
40%, right? 97% of the organic sugar in the U.S. comes through Carlos.
Oh my God.
And so I asked him, I said, why'd you start a distillery? And he goes, I don't know. I guess I just like making things that people drink.
That's like genuinely like such a sweet, like humble answer, honestly.
Right?
That's like the nicest thing I've ever heard anyone say.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a genuine, sweet answer. I like making things that people drink. That's cool. Is he like a whiskey guy? Does he like love whiskey?
He does. He prefers Scotch.
That's wild.
The only time I've ever missed a flight was when I introduced him to Auchentoshan 3-Wood.
I've never had it.
It is I believe it's a lowland Scotch, and it is very unctuous, super cinnamon forward, which most Scotches don't have a lot of cinnamon. And it's, for me, it's the only Scotch I've had that's super reminiscent of Balcones single malt.
Okay.
Anyway, it's one of my favorite Scotches. I've always got a bottle on my shelf. But we went to a restaurant and he was like, Randy, you know more about whiskey. Go figure out what we should drink. So I walk up and I was like, oh, I know he loves Scotch. They got Auchentoshan 3-Wood. I come back. I'm like, have you had Auchentoshan? And he's like, no. So we get it. But he goes there all the time. And they all know him. Right. So you've been to Carrabba's. Have you ever heard of Carrabba's?
Carrabba's Italian Kitchen, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. So the original Carrabba's is in Houston, and it's in the neighborhood that he lives in. And Mama Carrabba still is like sitting at the bar.
What?
So
no way.
When she sold the franchise, she's like 90 something years old now. But like when she sold the franchise, she kept the original location. And it's still like 100% scratch.
Holy shit, that's awesome. I didn't know that. There's
like one Carrabba's that's not like the chain BS stuff, right? And so we're there, and the GM knows him. And so we order a round, and then we order a second round, and then the GM comes out and Cece's there, and he's like, oh my God, let me buy you a round of drinks. So he buys a third round, and we had wine with our food and all this stuff, and I missed my flight. And I think it cost me like $100 or like $70 or $80 to like fly out on the next flight or whatever. And I was like, totally worth it,
dude. Absolutely. Get fucked up with the original Carrabba's with a billionaire. Let's go.
Yeah. And all our people are like, everything was off menu. Like we didn't even order anything. Like they just brought us stuff. Right.
That's so cool. God. Everyone should have a billionaire friend. That's my takeaway from this podcast. Is everyone should have a billionaire friend.
I think most billionaires are terrible assholes, but Carlos is freaking awesome.
I know a guy who's not quite that rich, but is fairly wealthy, and I just want to hang out with him 24/7. He's the coolest guy I know. I actually know two guys like that. They're both the coolest guys I know. It's fun. Well, Randy, man, I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show. I'm serious about coming in January. I want to do it. Please keep up the great content. You have an open invitation if you want to come back on the show. I love talking to you. You were even cooler than I hoped you'd be. And it was one of my favorite moments in my bourbon journey. It was hanging out and talking to you for about an hour and a half. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I don't know that I'm worthy of that praise, but I do certainly appreciate it. And I love helping anyone else that's trying to spread the joy of whiskey. So I was happy to come on, but yeah, let's coordinate offline. I know that we're going to do a public event, or well, no, not public, a private event. And we'll make sure that you're invited to that. And all
Let's do it. I'm in 100%. Let's do it. Thank you guys for listening to the show, and thank you again, Randy, for coming on. And we will see you guys in the next one. Until then, cheers.